From the 101 Recap Book 1. Story and commentary for the movie Code 8 and Code 8, Part 2. On a parallel Earth in the early 21st century, it is found that 4% of people possess unique skills. The government calls them powers and requests that they register their capacities for monitoring. They enjoy great popularity in the workplace at first, but with the Third Industrial Revolution, all powers experience poverty and police persecution. Soon after, an illicit hire known as psych, manufactured from the spinal fluid of powers who are trafficked, is sold by a crime gang. In retaliation, the police begin pursuing them using massive drones and unique robots known as guardians. With the help of electricity, Connor, a powered man, performs construction work in the interim while searching for a better long-term solution. The cops stop by shortly after he accepts a job at a building site to make sure no powers are being used. To help the drone identify which workers have powers, all of the workers are arranged in a queue and instructed to face the sky. Before they realize there is a warrant out for one of the guys, the police tell the powers to get out and get a permit. In an attempt to get away, the man shoots at the cops as they attempt to apprehend him. The person is instantly shot to death by the guardians that the drone drops at that precise moment. A powered man's flat is being raided by another police squad in the meantime. Using his superhuman strength, the guardian breaks the door's seal by throwing a disc at it, shattering its neck. Officer Park enters and stops the man at gunpoint when he tries to flee through the window. When the police search the flat later, they find a room full of people with powers who are having their spinal fluid removed. Additionally, there are numerous psych bags, which connect the case to Marcus, a crime boss. Afterwards, Connor pays his mother Mary a visit at the supermarket where she works. Due to a brain tumor, Mary occasionally loses control of her ability to regulate her body temperature. When she unintentionally breaks a sauce bottle, her supervisor screams at her, which prompts Connor to step up and nearly use his power to defend her. The manager dismisses them both from his store right away. When Connor encourages Mary to begin chemotherapy later at home, she reminds him that they cannot afford it. When Connor spots a Lincoln Power vehicle the following day, his pal alerts him to the fact that they are associated with Marcus' gang. But because Connor needs the money badly, he accepts Garrett the driver's offer of job in exchange for an electric. After that, Garrett takes him to a chemical plant and orders him to turn off an electric fence. After getting shocked after using a bolt cutter for the first time, Connor utilizes his strength to overload the fence. The gang eventually enters after Maddie uses her fire to melt the lock. They begin placing chemical barrels onto the truck, but a guard soon discovers them and tries to get help. Garrett uses his telekinetic ability to take away the radio, forcing the guard to give up and claim he didn't see anything. Regretfully, even after the gang departs, the police receive an alarm, and all patrol officers are instructed to search for a red van. Garrett pulls over beneath a bridge, and once the group takes off the red sheet covering it, the vehicle becomes white. They are promptly ignored by a police drone when it discovers them because they are the wrong color. They eventually arrive at a garage, where Rhino shows them the way through a hidden doorway into a nightclub. Wesley is reprimanding crime boss Marcus for his recent failure to make payments. Wesley instructs Marcus to read his associate Copperhead's mind in order to see all the methods Copperhead knows how to kill someone when Marcus tries to defend himself. After giving Marcus a week to pay, Wesley departs. Connor is then introduced by Garrett to Marcus, who perceives Connor's thoughts and concurs that he ought to join their group. While Nia is showing Connor around, Marcus asks Garrett about Connor's powers and tells him that he needs to pay Wesley before he can pay for the chemicals. Garrett believes Connor still needs some training. Marcus requests that he prepare for their upcoming task. Officers Park and Davis discover the chemicals were taken to dilute Marcus's psyche when they are investigating the robbery. They'll need to look up a list of persons who have those skills because they can tell that fire and electric capabilities were utilized on the door. Connor decides on Garrett once more the following day over a construction work. Garrett gives Connor the task of shorting a car's alarm, which he does by pounding his fist into it in order to test his mettle. Garrett says it's time to train when Connor concentrates, and uses his abilities to turn it off. They begin with a straightforward task where Connor has to ignite a bulb. Connor breaks it because he can't control himself, so he has to practice breaking bulbs until he gets it right. As the days go by, Connor is assigned tasks like obtaining money from the dealers by keeping them at bay or compelling them to make a payment using his abilities. He continues to practice during his free time, and soon he succeeds in lighting more than one bulb at once. Connor can easily shoot down a dealer who tries to defend himself with his own electrical bodyguard by receiving the shock without feeling any discomfort. Connor, full of confidence, goes to see his mother's boss and threatens to treat Mary more kindly. After that, he returns home and tells Mary that he has at last secured a permanent position. Park and Davis watch Connor outside and add him to the suspect list. After visiting a bank the following day to learn more about the protocol and the surveillance cameras, Connor and Garrett estimate they have 5 minutes to complete the theft before the police drones arrive in 7. Mary, in the meantime, arrives at work and is taken aback by her boss's cordial behavior. Later, Garrett's group breaks into the bank and takes out all of the guards before keeping everyone inside hostage with guns drawn. In order to prevent the bank from remotely locking the vault, Connor dashes to it right away and turns off the power. When the alarm goes off and they ask a worker to manually access the vault, they find that the majority of the money has already disappeared. With what's left, the team heads outside, where a few guardians and drones are already waiting. They may easily flee once Connor uses his skills to quickly hit them and cause them to collapse to the ground. The group then visits Marcus, who is upset that they weren't able to collect the entire sum of money. Copperhead appears out of nowhere as he and Garrett are arguing and tries to kill Marcus, but Rhino deflects the bullets with his incredibly hard physique. When Copperhead tries to shoot Nia instead, Connor uses an electric shot to disarm her. Subsequently, Rhino shoots Copperhead repeatedly until she is dead when she stabs him in the arm. Later, as Nia is ingesting psych, Connor finds her. She notes that Connor was hurt during the battle and tends to his wound right away, telling him that she continues to work for Marcus because she owes him. Mary admits she called the place Connor claimed to be working at, but they had never heard of him there, and she questions Connor about the money he had hidden in his drawer when he gets home. When Connor tries to justify his choice of crime for her benefit, Mary abruptly loses control and crumbles. She is brought to the hospital right away, where the physician tells Connor that her tumor is forcing her brain against her skull, but Connor cannot afford to have the necessary surgery. Park and Davis are waiting for Connor to escort him to the station after he exits the hospital. When Connor insists he hasn't done anything wrong, the police inform him that Marcus is a violent felon and threaten to burn down $4 million worth of psych. Park explains that if Connor gives some information about Marcus, they can assist him with Mary's treatment. However, Davis cuts him off by making fun of his father, which incites Connor. Enraged, Connor maintains that they are dealing with the incorrect guy and that the police must release him since they lack sufficient evidence. After Garrett gets him up, Connor visits Marcus, who does a mental readout to make sure Connor didn't tell the police anything. Subsequently, Connor brings up all the psych that the cops are going to bring to the burning site and offers Marcus a deal. If Connor helps him obtain the psych, Marcus will give Nia to him. Marcus grants Garrett's request to become a partner rather than a crew member. Later on, the gang prepares their strategy by erecting several obstacles. The drones, which must fly back when they reach the no-fly zone, soon follow the armored van. Maddie and Freddie follow the road in their car while Garrett uses a garbage truck to block it because the barricades force the van to take an alternate route. While Garrett tries to stop and the driver shouts at him, Connor charges his power and sends a tremendous bolt of electricity into the vehicle that takes out the Guardians. The Guardians are then kept down by Garrett using his telekinesis so Connor can disconnect their circuits. They are soon joined by Freddie and Maddie, who assist them in taking out the Guardians one by one until only a single robot remains. Freddie puts tear gas into the vehicle after Maddie burns a hole in it to force the police to leave. The drones opt to fly into the no-fly area when the van stops responding. After Maddie gives Rhino the psych cases, his men start shooting the guards. Before he and his group turn to shoot the others, Rhino also shoots Maddie. Garrett must use telekinesis to relocate Freddie in order to save him. Subsequently, Rhino and the psych depart, leaving 2 men to eliminate Garrett's squad. More Guardians show up at that point, forcing the gangsters to fight themselves, which lets Garrett, Freddie, and Connor flee. The Guardians are immune to ordinary gunfire. They dispatch Rhino's men in a matter of seconds. Garrett must carry Freddie to the car after he is struck by a stray bullet as the 3 of them are running. Regretfully, Freddie does not survive, and as they are making their way out, Connor accuses Garrett of being behind everything, claiming Marcus abandoned them because Garrett demanded too much. Rhino brings the psych to Marcus in the interim, but Marcus refuses to let Nia go as her father still owes him money. Following that, Connor goes to see his mother and assures her that he will get her the therapy, but Mary feels that he should let go. Later, at a diner, Connor meets with Park to negotiate a compromise. He promises to turn himself in, but he wants the police to apprehend Marcus first. Marcus starts coughing quite a bit at the bar and asks Nia to help him. The cops abruptly turn off the bar's electricity and barge in to start shooting at them. Marcus, Nia, and Rhino flee through the doorway that leads to the garage. Garrett, nevertheless, is waiting for them and fires a shot to Marcus's chest. Rhino fires back right away, but Garrett uses his telekinesis to disarm him before taking aim at him. Unfortunately, Rhino begins charging towards Garrett when his bullets miss, so Garrett uses his strength to slow him down. Connor shows up at the precise moment and blasts Rhino with lightning. When Rhino grabs Connor and pushes him against the table, Connor tries to respond by charging as much as he can, but sadly, his power is insufficient. Subsequently, as Rhino starts to choke Connor, Garrett stabs him in the eye with a sharp object, enabling Connor to ultimately kill him with a shock to the skull. Marcus is threatening Nia in the meantime while pleading with her to heal him, but Nia grabs his gun as she approaches. Garrett then uses his power to kill Marcus and seize the gun from Nia. He then hands the revolver to Connor and orders him to grab anything he desires. Nia then admits that she has a wound that looks much like Connor's from the other day, explaining that her body absorbs the wounds that she repairs. Instead, if she heals Mary, she will pass away from cancer. Ignoring this, Connor brings Nia to the hospital at gunpoint. However, just as Nia is ready to heal Mary, Connor detects that she is in pain and stops her. Connor takes Mary's hand as she awakens and witnesses her demise. Marcus's body is later discovered in the garage by Park and Davis. After giving Nia his van so she may go, Connor confesses himself into the police and is imprisoned. The government prohibits the usage of power in the city after such a debacle. After 5 years, Tarek needs money to help pay for his younger sister Pavina's schooling. He works for Garrett as a psych salesman, and one afternoon Tarek comes up to him to demonstrate his practiced camouflage skills in the hopes of getting a raise. Tarek is pushed away by a gang member after Garrett declines. Garrett then attends a presentation given by Police Sergeant Kingston, who is showcasing the newest K9 units to the community. This is a nice solution to the recent complaints about how violent guardians are and how many powers they kill. When they notice someone is armed, the K9s will charge at them, but as soon as the person raises their hands, they will instantly retreat. Pavina is observing the show as well, and she is gazing into the robot dog with glowing eyes. Garrett sends one of his men to the typical hiding place that night to deposit the bribe money. After the man leaves, Tarek pursues him and keeps the money for himself. As Kingston arrives at that very moment, Tarek flees quickly while Kingston becomes enraged about the missing money. Tarek uses his powers to hide as Kingston's men explore the location, but Tarek still has to flee after one of the officers notices the contour of his face. Simultaneously, Pavina realizes her brother hasn't returned home and searches for him. A frantic chase happens after Tarek is pursued by a K9 sent by the authorities. Tarek uses his skills to disguise himself as a pile of cloth when the K9 approaches the abandoned building where he has taken refuge after much fleeing. Fortunately, Tarek is able to flee as the robot quickly disappears and the K9 sensor fails to detect the difference. But just as Tarek is about to leave for home, the K9 locates him once more. Fearful, Tarek lifts his hands and the dog sits down, but the police notice this via the robot's cameras and command it to inject Tarek with a lethal dose of a certain poison that kills people. As soon as Pavina arrives to witness everything, Tarek writhes in agony before passing away. The dog chases after her when she yells her brother's name, but the camera cuts to black as she screams. Kingston checks on the K9 that was taken down yesterday night in the police station early in the morning, but the IT technician is clueless as to what went wrong. The final second of the video, which features a small girl, is his sole hint. Immediately, several officers are dispatched to locate her. In the meantime, it is revealed that Connor was released from prison and was leading a fairly dull life without employing his abilities as a caretaker at the community center. He finds that the lock on the back shed has been smashed when he goes outside to get the trash. When he opens the door, he is met by a frightened Pavina who is hurling rubbish at him. After promising not to hurt her, Connor follows through to get her inside, where his supervisor Mina consoles her and encourages her to talk about what transpired. When an officer unexpectedly begins knocking on the door, Mina proceeds to divert his attention while Connor and Pavina make their getaway out the back door. As Mina confronts the officer and shuts the door in his face, Connor and Pavina discover that additional police have closed the road. They decide to create a diversion, but they wind up on a security camera. When Connor brings Pavina to his flat, they discover via the news that Tarek's death was caused by an overdose, according to the police. When Pavina exposes the falsehood, her powers go berserk and she begins to affect the television out of rage. It needs to be turned off by Connor to prevent an explosion. Pavina announces the police are approaching as she picks up radio signals at that same moment. When the police arrive at the building with AK-9, they discover that Connor's flat is unoccupied. He and Pavina have been hiding in another flat, and they attempt to flee as soon as it is safe to do so. Unfortunately, two guardians emerge from a drone and land in front of them as soon as they step outdoors. Connor shoots a robot down with his electrical skills right away, but he hasn't done this in so long that it makes him extremely weak. When the drone's voice informs them that they have been captured, Pavina uses her skills once more to bring down all of the drone's systems and escape with Connor. With no other option, Connor goes to see Garrett and requests the favor that he is due. In response to Connor's request for cash, a new ID, and a safe haven for his secret companion, Garrett says he is fully aware of Pavina's background and the events involving the police. He outlines his arrangement with Kingston, saying that in return for the gang's freedom to operate, the police receive a portion of the proceeds from his sales. In order to protect the community and ensure that the donations are fairly compensated and remain anonymous, Connor is employing this. Connor then offers to assist with all of the fictitious documentation, but he warns Pavina that she needs to move on from what she witnessed or else the police won't ever leave them alone. Pavina initially objects, but Connor persuades her that this is their last hope of surviving. The group then visits a woman who possesses the ability to erase people's memories. The woman's eyes darken and she begins to operate on Pavina's psyche as soon as she touches her hands. She initially just erases the memory of Tarek's passing, but she quickly begins to erase any other memories involving Tarek. Pavina objects right once, saying that this isn't what they agreed upon. Connor tries to stop it, but the gang restrains him while they explain that Tarek needs be fully obliterated because any trace of him could bring the others back. An enraged Pavina begins to resist the woman's attempt to stop her, refusing to let go of the memories of her cherished brother. Concurrently, a flame-wielding gang member attempts to burn Connor, but Connor stops him cold by striking the man in the arm and forcing him to shoot at a ceiling pipe. Now that water is falling everywhere, Connor uses it as a conductor to use his power to bring down the entire group. After that, Mina accepts to drive Connor and Pavina away in her car. When the police drone finds her license plate, they become suspicious because of the way she had handled the cop before, so they dispatch men to find her. Garrett and his group soon surround Mina's car, and when they attempt to go in a different direction, the vehicle becomes trapped in a pile of rocks beneath a bridge. After Garrett breaks out the car's windows with his telekinetic abilities, the gang members forcibly take the group out of the vehicle. Two guardians in the vicinity capture everything for the police, who need this done right away to prevent further incidents of police violence. Although Garrett is told to shoot Pavina, Connor places himself in the way, making Garrett unable to take a shot. When time runs out, the Guardians unleash a barrage of bullets that swiftly murder a number of gang members as everyone else flees for their lives. Garrett is shot, suffering serious injuries, and Mina is also injured, but she manages to deflect the bullet with her palm due to her thick skin. In an attempt to save one of her buddies, a gang member ends up dead as well. The Guardians shoot it down as well, but not before Garrett uses his abilities to remove a mirror from the car. He informs Connor that they must cooperate in order to survive since he is desperate. Mina gives her okay and motions for Connor and Pavina to depart, while Garrett raises some boulders to serve as a shield, and she goes outside to serve as a distraction. While Mina is being shot repeatedly till she collapses, the men and Pavina manage to flee to Garrett's car. Thanks to her thick skin, Mina is still alive when Kingston gets there, but her time is running out. When Kingston promises to give her medical care in exchange for information, Mina reacts by spitting in his face and eventually passes away. The group arrives at Garrett's former abandoned orphanage in the evening. Garrett is restrained by Connor and Pavina, enabling him to use his abilities to extract the bullet from his chest. Pavina gets fed up with running when Connor suggests they go to the border when they are eating a snack. When Davis discovers them the following morning, he informs them that Kingston has too much power inside the force, making it impossible to overthrow him. Pavina says that if she had one of the K9s, she could use her access to the recording of all the corruption and air it on national television. The lads decide to go see Kingston's robot dog at home after Davis remembers that he has one. A few hours later, posing as police union representatives, Garrett and Connor visit Kingston's home to express their support for the sergeant. Stephanie, Kingston's wife, readily welcomes them, and since she is unaware of her husband's dubious activities. Pavina observes from the automobile how Kingston parks his K9 in the garage upon his arrival. He knows as soon as he steps inside that this is a trap, but he is unable to speak to Stephanie and chooses to let the guys question him as though they were longtime friends. In the meantime, Pavina utilizes her might to get the dog by opening the garage door. The police IT guy receives a warning from the K9 as soon as she touches it, and tries to contact Kingston to warn him. Garrett quietly tells Kingston not to answer his phone when it rings by gently nudging a knife on the table with his powers. When the technician tries the house phone next, Connor pretends to use the loo while Stephanie answers the call. When they are left alone, Kingston reveals that he is also telekinetic and tries to hurl the knife at Garrett, but Garrett blocks it right away. Both men utilize their skills against one another, but Kingston lost practice because he hadn't used them recently, and Garrett prevails handily, dropping the knife. In the garage, Connor helps a terrified Pavina focus on her abilities and obtain what they require. Subsequently, Garrett chooses to depart, while maintaining good manners once Stephanie returns and informs Kingston that he has an urgent warning regarding his dog. After that, Kingston runs to his garage to find that his K9 has vanished. He then gives the order for all of his men to go look for it. After confirming that she can view every recording, Pavina and the other two depart in the automobile with the robot. Garrett promises to give them access to a computer when he brings them to a secure flat, but after yet another betrayal, they discover a group of gang members. Connor, full of rage, tries to assault Garrett, but Garrett stops him with his power first. It appears that Garrett wants to maintain control over Kingston, the side company, and the neighborhood leadership. Garrett then uses his ability to rip off the dog's head, giving it to a gang member and ordering him to protect it with all of his might. Garrett greets Kingston and his men outside and shows them the robot's body while threatening to divulge the information if his people aren't left in peace. But Kingston strikes back, cuffing Garrett after stabbing him, then sending his troops and another K9 inside the structure. When the gang discovers that reporters are already gathering at the flat, Pavina explains that they still have time to carry out her plan, and Connor persuades the man to give him the robot head. Connor tries to discharge lightning at the police when a K9 unlocks the door and they charge in, but sadly, their shields have been altered to absorb it. When the authorities open fire right away, Connor and Pavina flee, and the gang members fight back using a range of abilities, such as telekinesis and flames that form a barrier of fire between them and the police. Unfortunately, the police assault again after the K9 swiftly extinguishes the fire, leading to a vicious struggle. They take out the police officers one by one with the help of their abilities and superb cooperation, but when a man with superhuman strength tries to attack Kingston, Kingston uses his own strength to stop him and shoots him in the head. AK-9 approaches Connor and Pavina as they enter the corridor in the meantime. Connor continues to shoot lightning at it, but it is unabated, and the robot attacks him to the ground in an attempt to inject the poison. In a desperate attempt to hit the dog, Connor uses all of his might, which also causes the power to go out. Connor believes he has won when he sees the K9 frozen and the emergency lights coming on, but the robot moves out of nowhere and begins injecting him. Pavina approaches Connor as the poison begins to slowly seep into his body and focuses until she is able to take command of the robot and halt it. Connor survives, although the small amount of poison leaves him debilitated. The IT guy then shows up in the lift with another K9, so Pavina sends the first one into battle and quickly destroys the newcomer. Fearful, the officer fires, but the bullets have little effect, so the K9 tackles him to the ground, severing his fingers in order to take his weapon. When Connor eventually gets to his feet, he finds that Pavina is seriously injured from a bullet that went wayward. Connor scoops up Pavina and carries her outside while additional police officers storm the apartment and subdue the gang members. However, Connor becomes too weak to continue and places Pavina down on the ground. They then notice the reporters in the area, and Connor motions for them to approach. When the authorities attempt to send another K9 after Garrett, he uses his telekinesis to fold the machine into a worthless metal ball. At last, Davis shows up and causes all the police to reposition so that the reporters may get close to the two people. Using the last of her vitality, Pavina touches the camera and the robot's head to spread Kingston's depravity across the nation. Stephanie is horrified to learn the truth about her spouse at home. As Kingston exits the building, he tries to shoot Pavina, but Garrett stops him in his tracks and holds him at gunpoint, giving Davis the opportunity to move in on Kingston and take him into custody. After achieving their objective, Connor and Pavina collapse. After 3 months, Kingston is under investigation, and the journalists begin to track the corruption's path to higher authority. Garrett, incarcerated, contentedly watches the news. After recovering from her injury, Pavina thanks Connor for everything as he opens the youth center for all the neighborhood kids. Connor is back working as a caretaker. Code 8 and Code 8, Part 2: A futuristic look at inequality and power. Explanation. Set in a world where specials, people with superhuman abilities, are treated as a cheap labor force and outcasts, Code 8, 2019, and its sequel, Code 8, Part 2, 2024, follow Connor Reed, Robbie Amell, a struggling construction worker with low-level telekinetic powers. He reluctantly gets pulled into the world of illegal underground work for criminals to make ends meet. Criticism. Fresh take on superheroes. The films explore the social and economic consequences of superpowers, showing the world where specials are discriminated against instead of celebrated. Gritty and grounded, the films have a more low-budget, independent feel, focusing on the struggles of everyday people rather than CGI spectacle. This might feel less polished compared to Hollywood blockbusters. World building. Both films hint at a larger world with different factions and power dynamics, but some viewers might crave more fleshed-out details about the universe. Moral. Code 8 explores themes of class struggle, discrimination, and the importance of fighting for equality. It asks viewers to consider the consequences of a society that marginalizes a portion of its population. The moral message is clear: even those with extraordinary abilities can face ordinary struggles. Standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult, can be the most important power of all. Part 2 Considerations. Code 8 Part 2, 2024. Following the events of the first film, Connor and his friend Garrett, Stephen Amell, become more involved in the fight for justice for specials. The sequel expands on the world building with new characters and potentially a larger conflict brewing. Critical reception. Reviews for Part 2 are not yet widely available, so it's too early to say definitively how it compares to the first film. Easy understanding. Imagine X-Men with a blue-collar twist. Code 8 and its sequels show what life might be like for everyday people with superpowers who are treated as outcasts. The films explore social injustice, the fight for equality, and the importance of using your abilities for good, even when the odds are stacked against you.